Alright, welcome everyone. Today we're gonna speak about Formula One's CSR policies. So during the years, Formula One has evolved a lot as a sport and has evolved a lot also in its behavior towards the public and towards the social issues of the sport itself. Amongst the motorsports, Formula One is the most popular one, the most famous one in the world, with so many fans around the world. And in the last years, Formula One has grown a lot its young public, especially since the arrival of Liberty Media, and it's so becoming a world-leading sport in terms of innovation and in terms of its policies. Now, we can say there are two main eras of Formula One. The first one, which is the Bernie Ecclestone's era. Being Bernie Ecclestone the former owner of the Formula One business, well, we can say that the sport was very much different. Formula One, in fact, was not very socially aware. Bernie Ecclestone himself was not interested in social policies whatsoever, in corporate social responsibility. And more than that, Bernie Ecclestone himself was involved in some scandals, like when he said that, in his opinion, female drivers were worth nothing. And this was criticized by many people, including, for example, Danica Patrick, a famous IndyCar driver. Since the arrival of Liberty Media in 2017, Formula One has changed a lot. Liberty Media has brought a lot of attention on corporate social responsibility topics, and in the last years especially, we've seen many projects which go in this way. Since the arrival of Liberty Media, the sport has rejuvenated a lot, has changed, and is completely different from what you had before with Bernie Ecclestone. So we can say, since the arrival of Liberty Media, we've had a new era for Formula One. But what does this mean? Let's find out. So, the new Formula One CSR policies can be split into three main topics. The first one being diversity and inclusion, the second one being community, and the third one being sustainability. Now, speaking of diversity and inclusion, what they write on their website is that they want to base their intern program on engineering schools, more inclusion for LGBTQ community, and to grow the female participation, especially after what Bernie Ecclestone has done in the previous years. What about community? Well, more long-term projects, the creation of long-lasting changes in the local communities of races. And what about sustainability? The application and the improval of hybrid engine to reduce the use of single-use plastics into the paddock, new freight and logistics methods to be able to travel around more efficiently, and the commitment towards net zero carbon policy by 2030. Speaking about the theme of women in motorsport, well, we have to say that W Series, the creation of this new female-only racing series, was one step forward. This gave the possibility to have a new occasion for many female drivers in a support series to Formula One to show their abilities and their talent to everyone. But this also generated some polemics, but we'll see them later. What about the removal of grid girls? Yes, since the arrival of Liberty Media, the famous grid girls dressed in tights before the race have been removed and replaced by grid kids. This was in order not to objectify grid girls and not to see them more as objects, more as an object of sexism than everything else. Speaking always of diversity and inclusion, Formula One has committed itself to the We Race as One project, which is for the inclusion of the LGBT community. So this project includes many other areas that we'll explore later and has many good points, but also some quite a bit sketchy points. Speaking of sketchy points, we have to say that diversity and inclusion strategies are very nice. Yes, they're very nice on their website. But what happens when we take a look at what they actually do? Well, Formula One has behaved a bit, not in a very correct way, we have to say. For example, we have the Saudi Arabian and Qatar Grand Prix, which are held this year in 2021, which are two countries which are very, very famous for their infringements of human rights and especially female rights. Still, Formula One seems not to care about these issues and still races there. So this raised the question, is Formula One more interest to money than social issues? Also, speaking of females and Greek girls, we have to say that W Series, the new series created for women, isn't very ethical because it's just for women, and then the women who race there are usually not as highly regarded as female that race in a normal series like Formula 2 or Formula 3. Speaking of Greek girls, the Greek girls actually were very, very, very well paid and wanted to do this job. So why were they were banned? This is a question which was raised to Formula One and still wasn't answered. Let's change topic then. Let's go to sustainability. Sustainability has been a huge topic for Formula One lately, as it is fundamentally a polluting sport, we have to say. But they've had many good initiatives, positive ones, such as the introduction of hybrid engines in 2014. Hybrid engines are in fact very, very less polluting than the standard internal combustion engines, and they're also more efficient. They've also committed themselves, Formula One, to net zero carbon by 2030, and they've already reduced traveling stuff and freights in 2020 by 36%. So yeah, they're definitely committing to a positive CSR for sustainability. But we have to see, not everything of this is completely true. Formula One, in fact, has a really, really huge problem with logistics. I'll make you an example. The calendar for 2022 says that we'll go to Australia, then to Imola, which is in Italy, then to Miami, then back to Spain, and then to Monaco, Azerbaijan, and back to Canada, and then back to United Kingdom. This has to be conjugated with the fact Formula One says they want to try to reduce as much as possible the logistic pollution. But wait, they've just planned a schedule which implies going back and forth between the continents. This is not looking good for Formula One because what they say is not what actually they're doing. Triple headers haven't helped this at all. Holding 3 races in a row in 3 weekends is not very easy for logistics and creates a lot of pollution and stress on people who work for Formula One teams and Formula One staff itself. Not speaking that there is another side of sustainability which was just briefly touched. It's the financial sustainability. Well, we have to say that Formula One has implemented a very effective cost cap in 2021 for 2022 of $145 million a year. So the big spenders won't be able to spend as much as before. The big spenders like Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, the very, very big companies. While the independent teams, will be still able to catch up a bit because of this. But there is a fundamental flaw in this cost cap. And the flaw is that the top paid personnel and drivers are excluded from this. So this means that the big spenders are always going to be able to pay more for it, the drivers and the very, very top end management. So in a certain way, it's still unfair to many teams, but we can say it's a step in the positive direction. It isn't instead very much a step in the positive direction, the logistics of Formula One, because they're really not trying as hard as they should. And we arrive to community. Speaking about community initiatives, well, they've had some very positive ones. The most famous one must be Project Pitlane, which was born in 2020 during the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic. This Project Pitlane meant that many teams used their capacities and converted to produce medical stuff and machines to help breathing instead of producing car parts. And this was very, very much a positive initiative, as many Formula One teams has since then helped a lot in raising awareness for COVID-19 and helping ill people with their medical supplies. But there we can say there are two faces. A positive one, as the one with Project Pitlane, and a negative one, which can be the social problems of the neighborhoods of races. In some races, you see very, very posh atmosphere, such as in Monaco, in Abu Dhabi. Wow, it's amazing. In some other races, you see this very posh, elegant, and exclusive atmosphere, which is surrounded by a more negative atmosphere. This is the case, for example, of Interlagos, where the racetrack is very near one of the poorest favelas of Sao Paulo, which is a slum area where a lot of poor people live and work. And it's not really fair to have a spectacle like Formula One very near these poor people. And this generated many problems to drivers, to staff and suppliers. We have a very recent example of Will Buxton, which is a famous Formula One journalist, which was pointed a gun as its head and the exit of the Interlagos racetrack. Jenson Button in 2011 was stolen a watch right around the track because, you have a very exclusive atmosphere in front of a favela. This is something that doesn't make F1 look great at all. And it makes the sport look like a sport which doesn't care about the community and the venues they go to race. They just care about the money. That's the image they give out sometimes. So in the end, what can we say about Formula One? Is it really responsible? Well, yes and no. We can say it's a 50-50. Alright, they've progressed very much from the days of Bernie Ecclestone, where they didn't care about CSR at all, and they've rejuvenated the sport with new life and new initiatives, which brought a lot of positive attention onto Formula One. But on the other side, there are still too many controversies which hurt the reputation of the sport. So I think that Formula One should be careful, because right now it has a pretty good brand image, but in the next year it has to be more socially aware and to make more facts more than words, because the credibility is already starting to decline. So I can say Formula One CSR is a positive one, but it has to improve, and very quickly in the next years. Thank you for listening.